former NDP leader Tom Mulcair, he recently wrote something that I know, like this headline, when I first brought it to you guys, I know Tristan, you disagreed on exactly what those words meant when Mulcair wrote them. But the interpretation from another Tristan, this is Tristan Hopper, from I think he's from the National Post. The headline to this story is former NDP leader Tom Mulcair tells Canadians not to vote NDP. So we'll discuss exactly whether that's the meaning or is there like some more nuance to it. But what Mulcair wrote was that if you can't say seriously that you're going to form a government that can take on Trump, then get out of the way. So this was taken as kind of a jab at his own party, his own party's leader, Jagmeet Singh, who's saying, "I want to be prime minister. I'm going to take on Trump. I'm going to fight." It's funny how like that's a Trump slogan, but Jagmeet Singh is saying fight every time every chance he gets. But anyways, the NDP are polling at like single digits. If you trust any of the polls that are coming out of the NDP, they're polling at like 8 to 9% right now. High single digits, but still single digits. And they might lose more than half of their current seats, which is already not that many because they're the third biggest party in Canada. And then after this election, if nothing changes, if the polls are accurate, then they'll lose like most of their seats, like probably more than half. So this is kind of what I think Mulcair was getting at, where it's like you can't really, like, if you vote NDP, you're sort of splitting the vote, and then you're tossing your vote away on a party that can't really win. And even if they win this seat, then it's going to be one seat out of like a lot of other seats that won't go to the NDP. So it's kind of like what the interpretation that I got from this was that Mulcair is saying, hey, like, vote for one of the two parties this time, because the two major parties, i.e. the Liberals or the Conservatives, because they can actually, either of those parties would have a chance at forming a government that actually works, that can take on Trump. And if you don't, if you split the vote, and then you get like a mess in Parliament where nobody has kind of a commanding majority, then you're going to get a messy response to Trump, and then that could be an existential crisis. And that's not me taking words out of his mouth. He literally said that what's coming out of Donald Trump's mouth is an existential crisis to Canada. And I think that you'll actually find a lot of people in Canada that would agree to that sentiment, where Trump is saying all this stuff about the 51st state over and over again. So Mulcair is saying that, hey, like, we need to unite under a government that actually works this time around, and maybe it would be beneficial to not split the vote this time, which it's kind of like saying don't vote for the NDP, vote for one of the two major parties. At least that's my interpretation. So why don't I pass it off to you, Tristan, first, where maybe you said that you disagreed with this headline, that he didn't actually say don't vote for the NDP. So what's your interpretation of this statement that if you can't seriously say that you're going to form a government to take on Trump, then get out of the way? What did Mulcair mean by this, in your opinion?
Well, I might be disproving what you were saying earlier, what I was suggesting, but I think that he is saying not to vote for the NDP in general. I think he's maybe not necessarily, okay, maybe he's not necessarily explicitly saying don't vote for the NDP, but I think he's saying that at this point, the Liberals and the Conservatives are the only viable options. It's not the time to mess around with the fringe parties. It's time to vote for one of the big guys, because at this point, if you're more aligned with one of the parties than the other, it's probably better to put your vote in that bag rather than be supporting the NDP who at this point have proven that they have basically no chance of getting into power. They're kind of, they don't really have much to offer right now. Whether they have good ideas, whether they have bad ideas, when it comes right down to it, everyone's kind of fearful. This is not the time to put in an unknown entity and see if the NDP is going to do a good job. This is not your time for experiments. This is your time for one of the two big parties that have run the country for a bajillion years. Not actually, but that's kind of what I think he's really saying. It's like I think he's kind of alluding to that fact rather than encouraging people to vote for the NDP and have something completely that they're not aligned with. I honestly I don't think he's saying that people should vote liberal necessarily. I think that's maybe where we kind of saw more of a disagreement, because I think you tend to go, if you're NDP, you should vote for liberal. No, maybe not should, but you're probably more aligned with the liberals. Whereas I feel like there's a core group of NDP folks who are socially pretty liberal, but fiscally relatively conservative, who are in a weird spot where they align better with the conservatives on the fiscal side, but better with the liberals on the social side. And I think at this point right now, I think most people, the fiscal side is much more front of mind than the social side. And so the NDP supporters who fall in that category may be going towards the conservatives in this instance, rather than the liberals that we would assume, just looking at the graph of like where things are left, right. The liberals might be closer to the NDP, but actually, if you're really looking at like the perspectives of the NDP on those fiscal policies, back in Mulcair's day, the NDP was much more of a fiscally conservative entity rather than what it is today. So I suspect that there's a significant portion of NDP supporters who are from that time period, who don't align very well with the liberals, who are just spend, and who may have been more aligned with Jagmeet when he was first brought into power, like the NDP group, but are now realizing that maybe this is not what they're really into. And I'd have to double check on the dates for, I guess Mulcair was leader till 2017. So we have had Jagmeet for a while then. So maybe some of those folks have been pushed out, or maybe they voted for Jagmeet in the previous election only to realize as time has gone on that they are not super into him. But we haven't had another election for them to really showcase that disagreement. Because I feel like the most recent election, I think it was 2021, he was still kind of a relatively fresh face. Compared to Trudeau and such, and I think on that front he seemed a lot more appealing, and I think he did some pretty good social media and stuff appearances that generally painted him in a relatively positive light, at least in my perspective. Like, I know you guys think that his Among Us stage was kind of cringe, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was moderately endearing. Like, I was like, oh, that's neat. He plays games with the normal people. That's cool. Most people I know haven't. I like. There's no chance that I've run into a politician in a video game and been aware of it. Whereas, like, you could watch people like play games with them. So I thought that was. I thought that personally was relatively good advertising for him, at least from my perspective. It kind of showcased that he was. It leaned into the fact that he was a younger candidate than a lot of the other ones. So I think at this point fiscally conservative NDP folks are potentially going to jump ship pretty hard to Pierre. I think that's kind of where I'm really leaning towards on this front.
Yeah, actually, on that note of like politicians acting like normal people, my dad told me the other day that back in the day, he when he was on his way to work one day, he worked in downtown Toronto. He ran into Stephen Dion, who's the leader of the Liberals back then, and he just looked like a random guy. Like there was no like crowds of Secret Service bodyguards around him. Maybe there were, like they were just like disguised and hidden somewhere, but like it didn't seem like he was surrounded by a bunch of tall guys in sunglasses. He was just walking apparently by himself, and then my dad like went up and said hi to him and shook his hand and stuff like that. And I don't think he even like realized like exactly who he was. Like he definitely like he knew that he was like a politician or something, but like it was either during the election campaign or like shortly before that, where this is a guy that he ended up losing the election, but like at the time we didn't know that, and it's like this guy could be the next prime minister of Canada, right? Like, so yeah, I mean there are politicians. It's kind of like a thing in Canada, I feel like, where we don't always treat our politicians like they're some like super elevated godlike person, and I think that that's actually a very healthy thing, because politicians are just random people at the end of the day, right? But back to Tom Mulcair. I totally get. It's just at first I had maybe kind of a hard time understanding the mindset of the NDP and conservative swing voter because they're like these two parties are so far apart, right? So I don't know. Maybe if you're watching this from America, you don't know like exactly uh, like what the difference is between the NDP and the conservatives, but it's kind of like look, an AOC versus a Donald Trump. It's like maybe it's not that far, but it's almost that far apart, and it's like it seems like a big swing between the NDP and the conservatives. But I guess like you said, Tristan, maybe back in the day when Mulcair was leader of the NDP, the party was a lot more towards the center. Like, I mean, obviously they're still left leaning, but they were closer towards the center compared to what it has been under Jagmeet Singh. And I don't know. I think I don't want to like, spread rumors or anything, but from my perspective, it does seem like maybe there is some animosity between Mulcair and Jagmeet Singh, where maybe Mulcair is not very happy about the way that Jagmeet has led the party, and especially in this election, if polls are to be believed, then the NDP will lose a lot of seats whenever the election happens. So, my question, I'm going to toss it to you, Tristan, first, and then we'll toss it to Sunil. But do you think that Mulcair will vote for Jagmeet Singh? Because it doesn't seem like it if he's saying stuff like this, where we need to vote in a government that actually works for the people. So if he's not voting for his own party, if he's not voting for Jagmeet Singh, there's only two, like, I mean, I guess he could vote Green Party, but uh, that would fall under the not being able to form a government to take on Trump as well if you were to vote for the Green Party. So I would assume that like a lot of us here, the only two viable choices are liberals or conservatives. Do you think Mulcair, knowing what you know about him, do you think he's actually going to vote conservative, or if he's just going to vote for Carney, which is the more, I guess, politically aligned person?
So amusingly enough, I think he might vote for Carney, but not for the reason that we think. So I was looking at some of the posts that he's made in the past, and I get the vibe he does not like Pierre, like personally, not necessarily as like a you know like not like hate him, but I get the sense that like when because they were both you know in in conflict when he was opposition leader, right? And he's said, you know, in the past that like he found Pierre like, you know, kind of schwarmy or whatever that word is. So I suspect he might vote for Carney, if only because he doesn't really like Pierre. And he had past dealings with him and he didn't like him then. Um, Rather than like this being a particular love for Carney, I think this is just more of a case of, you know, you don't like one candidate and you're kind of impartial about the other candidate, and for all intents and purposes, those platforms they're running on are extremely similar at this point. You know, at that point, it's like, well, I know I don't like dealing with Pierre, so you know, maybe I don't want to vote for him. Or I didn't like dealing with Pierre. I don't want to vote for him. But I also could see him going the other way, as if he's just like, I don't really like Carney either, or he maybe doesn't maybe he doesn't align very well with the Liberals' past track record. Like he's been like, the only thing the Liberals have done correctly, the only thing the Liberals have said that they would do that they've done is run a deficit. It's like the only thing they said they'd run a deficit, they ran a deficit. That's it. Everything else, you know, they're just broken promises across the board. So I suspect he may also hold that against the Liberals, in which case, you know, he would potentially be more leaning towards the Conservatives. Again, I feel like he's probably in a weird spot where it's like, I feel like I don't think he particularly likes Pierre, and I don't think he generally likes the Conservatives, but I think he respects the Conservatives a lot more than a lot of the Liberals do, and a lot of the current NDP do, which I think gives him a higher chance of voting for the Conservatives. But I think I don't know if he likes the Liberals enough to swing him that way, is really what it comes down to. So
I feel like you've just described yourself instead of Tom Mulcair. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Like,
I'm similar.
You were pretty like aligned with Mulcair's NDP when Mulcair was the leader, right? So like, and I guess like, would it be safe to assume that if like, let's say Mulcair was still the leader of the NDP, you would be a lot more open to voting for that NDP as opposed to Jagmeet Singh's NDP, right?
Yes.
So like, given that, I feel like, you know, you've also said in the past that you're in a tough spot this election as well, because, you know, maybe there's a lot of stuff that you don't like about either major parties. So I feel like you've just described yourself. Like, tell me if that's fair.
I think that there is a lot of similarities. I've never interacted with Pierre, so I don't think I have a personal experience or anecdote where I'm like, yeah, dude's, I don't like the dude. The way I think Mulcair may have. But from a perspective of like who to vote for, I think that there's a similar kind of spot where, as I said, the fiscally conservative or more fiscally conservative NDP folks feel like they're in a weird spot where it's like, I don't really align with the Liberals as much as I did versus the Conservatives for that aspect. But then, you know, you're also wary of the Conservatives because the Conservatives have, you know, issues with their social policies at the same time. You know, like you know, it's all good and fine to vote for you know, Pierre until he starts cutting the things you care about, right? Like, I can vote for him and be like, yeah, it'll be great, we'll have a balanced budget, but then he starts cutting all the stuff I like, I'm not going to be happy about that either. So it's definitely a weird spot to be in. I feel like they've become, I feel like it's weird also because the Liberals are seemingly trying to aggressively shift towards the middle. So that makes it even more confusing because they're now more similar to the Conservatives than they were, which is like, are they now more appealing, or do I trust them less because they are essentially trying to ignore their previous track record and be like, look at all the new shit we'll do. And I'm not sure if I'm willing to overlook the track record, but I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there between that kind of spot. And yes, I did think I do think I turned this into chatting about my perspectives on that one after a bit too.
No, I mean, actually, that was part of the question, right? Like we were trying to like beat an endorsement out of you of or just beat an answer out of you as to which party you're gonna vote for, because the election is literally in like almost exactly a month. It'll be a month till the election tomorrow. So
oh no.
we will keep on asking you that question until you make it clear exactly. Which I think it's only fair because everyone else on this podcast has given their endorsements. I've given my endorsement for Pierre Poilievre, and so has Sunil. And Dom is not here today, but I believe that he will be voting conservative as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's only fair that you give your answer at some point before the election, but you still have time. You still have a month. Sunil, it's finally your turn to speak.
Yeah, I guess my perspective actually comes from being like a little. I have had experience being a political insider in the NDP. I did work on the 2011 campaign where the NDP got opposition under Jack Layton. I never worked for the party when Tom Mulcair was leader. Just to get some like inside information on the NDP, it's actually a very divided party internally between capitalists and socialists. There are left wing capitalists in the NDP, and there's left wing like full on socialists. I was on the convention floor in 2011 fighting for the pro capitalist side against the socialists because we wanted to remove the socialist language out of the NDP's official party doctrine. Jack Layton was always, a pro activist type like left winger that was able to like toe the line and try and kind of push the socialist wing of the party back, but he did it very softly. Just to give you a little bit of history, Tom Mulcair used to work for it was a MPP for the Quebec Liberals, which at that point in time under Jean Charest was basically a right of center party. So like Tom Mulcair is actually a fairly politically homeless individual. When he first started coming to federal politics, he actually interviewed to be a member of the Conservative Party. So Tom Mulcair is not like a traditional left winger. And when he won the leadership of the NDP campaign, a lot of the party insiders were very upset about that because they saw him as a conservative. They didn't see him as a socialist, and they didn't see him as a left winger. So when Tom Mulcair took over the NDP, he kind of like hijacked the party. And he tried to force the party back to much more of a tried to force the party back into a fiscally conservative position, which he did for the campaign. And then just to give you a little bit more history, when he lost that campaign, he was kicked out of the party and kicked out of his leadership. So I do not believe Tom Mulcair is a card-carrying NDP member, and I do not believe he has any love for that party. And Jagmeet does represent the socialist wing of the party. So like this isn't Tom Mulcair's party. I think that based on his commentary where he's been like saying positive things about Poilievre and kind of defending his position that Poilievre doesn't have a security clearance because if I was in his position, I'd do the same thing. I think that indicates that he's probably going to vote for Poilievre. But I don't know for sure. I don't actually know for sure. Personally, I didn't see the vote as an endorsement of Carney. Sorry, I didn't see his statement as an endorsement of Carney. I kind of actually saw it as a petty statement. Now, I will say that I was like, when I went to the convention after my employment at the NDP, and I actually was like hanging out with staffers and stuff, and I had to pretend I wasn't going to vote for Mulcair because I didn't want to piss off my staffer friends because the entire NDP like staffer they all rejected Mulcair were very sad when he won the candidacy. Mulcair was completely elected by outsiders and not people who worked for the party. And even I had to lie and say that I didn't vote for him to my friends. So if any of them ever watch this podcast, they'll now know I lied to them. But basically, the reason I say this, I just wanted to say the insider point of view because I think that Mulcair has sour grapes about Jagmeet in general, and he hates the NDP for what they did to him because they kicked him out of the party. And but I'm a supporter of Mulcair, and I'm one of those people that Tristan talks about, where I'm much more of a politically moderate, fiscally progressive, but I supported the NDP on a lot of social issues. In the end, I don't think he's endorsing Carney. I don't think he said anything positive about Carney. I think that the majority of NDP voters will probably switch to the majority of NDP voters typically strategically vote for the Liberals. So I think that regardless of what his intentions are, I would say maybe 60-70% of NDP voters, if they strategically vote, will end up voting for Carney. That's my opinion on it.
It's great that we have sort of a former NDP insider that can give us kind of like a deeper look into this situation. So thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for outing yourself in front of the NDP, in front of your NDP staffer friends who, if they ever watch this show, will know that they've been betrayed like years and years later. It's been like 10 years, right? Since
at least it's been 10 years, so maybe they forgot about me. So who knows?
Yeah.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, it can't be mad. It's been too long. And it's like, and granted, like the party, as you said, has totally changed, right? So it's like, the under Jagmeet Singh, who's from, the socialist wing of the party, like you said, and I would agree with that assessment, even though I'm not like a former NDP insider, but just judging from the perspective of an average citizen, I would say that, yeah, the NDP under Jagmeet has moved a lot further to the left than I would like, and the Mulcair NDP was a lot better in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, it's it does make sense what you're saying. So,
second Jagmeet started talking about price ceilings, I was like, you've lost the plot, man. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're just trying to, break economics right here. Like, this, congratulations. You're gonna make everything worse. Quit talking.
He was a full Soviet there for sure. It was totally like the Soviet moment, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, I feel like that completely invalidated the arguments I was hearing from him. I was like, oh, so you just have no idea what the hell you're talking about. You probably shouldn't vote for you anymore.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate. In case I'll find like maybe an article or something about that, in case our audience members are like, "What are you guys talking about?" So I think there was this one time that last year, Jagmeet was speaking in front of a grocery store in Burnaby, BC, where he proposed the idea of implementing a price cap on certain grocery store items like essentials like bread and stuff like that, which, yeah, as history has shown time and again, price caps do not work. Price caps have never worked, and what they do work on causing is not lower prices but stuff to be permanently out of stock, right? So the idea is that bread can be any price you want. It's just, if you're willing to accept having no bread, then you can give it any price you want, right? So bread can be $1 per loaf. You just won't have bread. So it is $1 per loaf. Like, the government's not lying to you. If you can get it, then it's $1 per loaf. But it obviously costs more than $1 to make a loaf of bread. So the producers are just not gonna make it, because like, why would you lose money producing something just to lose money after you do all the work, right? So anything can be any price as long as you're willing to accept that thing doesn't exist. So that's the idea of why price caps are bad, and it was very unfortunate to see Jagmeet kind of go down that route. Something that probably would have never happened if Mulcair was still the leader. But yeah, what are we gonna do, right? We'll just have to see how the election turns out, because as the polls are showing, one thing that like it's not like the conservatives are tanking. The reason why Carney is leading is not because the conservatives are tanking, it's because the NDP is tanking. That's like legit the main reason why the Carney liberals are surging. It's maybe like the conservatives have gone down slightly as well, but the conservatives have a strong base, right? So I would think that the floor um, is relatively high for how low the conservative support can go, but it just seems like the floor has dropped out under the NDP, and they've all gone to the liberals. Not all, but like half of them, like literally half the voter base who were gonna vote the NDP before when it was Trudeau, they're now going to be like, "Hey, Trudeau's gone, might as well vote for Carney because Jagmeet is totally just like not in it to win it." Uh, at least that's what I'm seeing in the polls. But feel free to disagree with me down in the comments if you'd like, which I will not read.